Metaphor Fantazio is a gem of a game, created by the same people behind Persona and SMT, so you know it's a pretty difficult game. But what if I make it a bit easier? By gambling, that is. You see, in Metaphor, one of the archetypes you can unlock is known as the Merchant, and its signature move, Gold Attack, costs $500 to use, but in return it has a very high crit rate. So now allow me to ask the question, can you beat Metaphor Fantazio with only the Merchant line of archetypes? Now, before I, start this challenge, I first need to unlock the Merchant archetype, which means I gotta play a little bit into the game. So think of this part as a prologue to the challenge. After getting kicked off a cliff by the big bad, I'm asked by my fairy companion if I remember our mission, to which I don't remember. So after hearing a watered down version of it, it was time to enact the plan. Step 1, enlist into the Royal Guard. Step 2, befriend the token hot guy. Step 3, don't die. And that last step is a difficult one too, but thankfully I'm the protagonist in a Jrpg. So I awaken to a magical power that makes this boss fight much easier. Both its legs and its wings are weak to wind magic, the only magic I have, so once I take those out, it starts eating its own fruit to heal itself. So I let my fairy Yukari deal with that, and after a couple more hits, I defeat it and save Stroll. Also while doing this, I complete step 4 of my plan, meet up with my informant and tell him to eliminate the target. Insert Griffith joke here. Anyway, the plan is to do it at the royal funeral, in broad daylight, in front of the whole city. It's a good plan, don't get me wrong, but in order to get to the funeral in time, we have to cut through an abandoned mineshaft. So we save that for tomorrow. And as I slumber, I meet a twinked up version of Igor and strike a deal with him. And this starts the full social link, the Seeker bond. So now I can upgrade that archetype. Then in the mines, we run into the guard captain that almost led us to our deaths. And he's kinda pissed that we're alive to, report his crime to everyone. We also learned that the guards captain was working with Luis, aka the big bad, and had a hand in the destruction of Stroll's village. And he kinda gets pissed at that. So pissed in fact that he awakens to an archetype, and this starts my second boss battle. Klinger will spawn with 2 guards to boost his defense, but they're very easy to take down. As for Klinger himself, he'll use fire magic, so I just have to hope he doesn't target Marth, who's weak to it. Then towards the end of the fight, he'll use a multi-hit attack, but it really doesn't do much, so Stroll is able to finish him off with one more hit. After this, I start the warrior bond with Stroll and the mage bond with Gallica. Now the game forces you to choose an archetype for Grius, and because I don't have the merchant yet, I just settle with the warrior for now. I also give Marth the mage archetype for the next upcoming battle against this human. The human is weak to ice magic, that's the reason why I gave him the mage, and its only big scary attack is when it sets up Hyper and targets the front row. So you just flank to the back and it will miss. Other than that, it's nothing to worry about, and after one action sequence, we escape the cave and hitchhike to the capital for the funeral. And now here's where a lot of the story's plot starts. So prepare for some yapping. Luis floats down from the heavens just to be like Lamau, the king's dead. Anyway, here's a human corpse. I should be king, yada yada. And then the dead king comes back in rock form to be like, nah, I'm turning this shit into a game show. So now anyone can be king. And this pisses off both Luis and Forden, the other big bad. Then the assassination attempt happens, but because the king's magic is protecting the front runners, Grius gets stuck in it, and Luis, well, I think you get the picture. Now one of Luis's henchmen, Zorba, takes over the chapel to make some sort of weapon. So it's up to me and Stroll to stop him. But then we meet this red knight that apparently knows Grius, or Alces as she calls him. So we go to the chapel. But then the architecture of the building is like nah and collapses. But guess who's waiting for us in the catacombs? If you said Grius's animated corpse, you'd be correct. And seeing our friend in such a state causes Hulkenberg to awaken to an archetype. So I think you can guess what's about to happen. Grius will use 2 moves, a basic attack and Mocking Phantasm, a move that will target all party members, unless you use Knight's Proclamation with Hulkenberg, to which then the move will only target her. My strat for this fight was to use Knight's Proclamation with Hulkenberg, attack with Stroll, and use healing items with Marth, because I didn't have Seeker equipped on anyone. But after that, we call it a day, and plan to face Zorba tomorrow. Also, Hulkenberg agrees to join our party after we reveal that the prince is alive and well. Well, he's not really well, but I think you get the picture. Now, instead of going after Zorba, I instead take the request that Brigitte gives me, and that is to defeat this Minotaur. Yeah, it's impossible. Even with all 3 of my party members being the mage archetype, to unlock the move Blizza, I only do a piss worth of damage before it knocks out a party member. So even though I didn't want to do this, the only way I could even start this challenge was to beat it on easy mode. And hell, even then I still had to get lucky enough for the Minotaur not to knock out a party member in its first attack. But after trying a little harder, I beat the beast, and now I can start the merchant bond with Brigitte, and unlock the only archetype I'm allowed to use for the rest of the game. Now it's finally time to go over the rules. First off, I can only use the merchant or tycoon archetype. Other archetypes can be learned, they just can't be equipped. Secondly, I'm allowing other archetypes' moves to be used by the merchant, because I sure as hell need buffs and debuffs. And finally, from this point on, I must be on hard mode at all times. So with that stated, the prologue is all over, and the real challenge can begin. Now, I think it's important to go into more depths about why the merchant is so broken. Firstly, the move Gold Attack is a physical almighty move, so it's able to hit any enemy regardless of strength or weakness. Secondly, its critical hit rate. Gold Attack already has a very high chance to crit, but the merchant also increases your luck stat as well, so more physical moves will have a chance to crit as well. Third and final reason is that it doesn't cost HP or MP to use. Instead, it costs $500 in in-game currency. Now, I know what you may be asking. What if you run out of money? Well, by having the merchant equipped on the protagonist, you'll unlock the move Alchemy, which means you earn more money by defeating weaker enemies in the overworld. So you can easily grind money in the game this way. Now that the merchant is pretty much explained, let's talk about the first mini-boss of the dungeon. The mage captain will spawn with 4 skeletons, one of which being a spellcaster, so I target him because the merchant is weak to fire. After that, I do get unlucky with the mage boosting the skeleton's attack, and the critical hit lands on Hulkenberg, leading to the mage to boost their defense as well. Then after taking another skeleton out, I focus on the mage, and by doing Brigitte's bond, I unlock an Igniter to heal my whole party. But even after healing, Hulkenberg still gets taken out, but then the mage goes down, and after that, the fight is free for the winning. Now the second mini-boss is a bit harder, because they can curse the party, which means the party's HP will drain each turn. So when that happens, I just use the feature to reset the battle, which is not cheating by the way, it's an ability in the game itself, because my fat ass is not watching long ass cutscenes if I'm about to die. Anyway, I get lucky with my critical hits and take out 3 of them in a single turn, so it kinda became a sweep after that. Now all that was left was to face Zorba, and yeah, lil bro only got to summon a zombie, but trust me, Zorba got his revenge by animating the Hieronymus corpse. Now normally you can't hit the heart with physical moves until you break the creature's shell, but because Gold Attack counts as an almighty skill, I'm able to attack it from the get-go, and I almost had it if it wasn't for a single type of magic, light magic, the only other weakness the merchant has. So I need a way to make sure the human doesn't use that magic. But then it hit me, I could break its shell each turn, making it unable to attack for a turn. Then I was able to easily defeat the knights that it summons inside of itself. This sounds insane out of context, I'm aware, but that's where I made my mistake, because if the ambush fails, it will use Soul Scream for extra turns. So instead of attacking the knights, I focus on the heart, and deal enough damage to defeat the human. Now it's on to the reason why everyone calls this game a Persona clone, the free time events. Seeing as I already used a couple days to unlock the merchant, nothing really spectacular happens. I just kinda hang out with my current party members, and Brigitte. I also die a lot to this desert kitty, but that's not important right now. But what is important is the tournament for the throne. See, I told you this shit was a game show. Anyway, it's the church's way of more or less skewing the odds of becoming king in their favor, so like real life. Anywho, the first challenge in this game show is to bring the head of the largest beast you can find. So we completely ignore that and go after a person, because we're not like other girls. We just want to win Luis over so we can steal his secret formula. Then the pimp shows up. That's kinda all he does actually. So we accept the request to take down this ex-knight named Heist for multiple kidnappings. Now you might be asking yourself, how will you travel to this new town to get this guy? Well, let me introduce you to the best character in this game. No, not her. Him. This is Nuris, and he's amazing, and we love him, and that's all. Well, actually it's not all, because I forgot to say he's the pilot to our gauntlet runner. Now that's all. Now before I can go and capture Heist, I'm interrupted by a fight between Luis's man and the church's lapdog. And because we want to get closer to Luis, we decide to lend Big Pimpin' a hand. Now if you pay attention, you'll start to notice a pattern. That being, in order for me to win during this challenge, I need to start stacking critical hits, because if I don't land a critical hit in my first turn, I simply retry to battle again. Now you can't attack Godot directly because of the king's magic, so in order to defeat him, you just need to attack his 2 guards. The only problem is Godot himself. For the first 2 turns, he'll do nothing, but but on the third, he'll heal and start going for light magic. Again, magic that the merchant is weak to. And really, the only thing I can do is hope to get enough critical hits in before I wipe. There's no strategy for this run at all. It's simply just about gambling. For legal reasons, I gotta say this is a joke. Anyway, after the two guards go down, Godot runs away, and then the big man shows himself and tells us he'll keep an eye out for us. So after a successful gambit, I start the gunner bond with Nuris. I also forgot to mention the two other bonds that I started, but if I forget to mention one in the future, just know that I probably started it because the bond system is very forgiving, unlike Persona. Anywho, now that we're in Martira, we get the details on Heist's hideout. And where else would a big bad live other than a cave, in the desert, surrounded by giant worms? The human sandworm has the move Sandstorm, very fitting. This move hits all and lowers your accuracy and evasion, but you don't have to defeat it in order to win. After you deal about 3/4 the damage to it, it will it vores you. What do you want me to say? Then, after taking full advantage of critical hits in order to defeat this tapeworm, we escape. And this time we do the opposite of before, which was vor. I'm sorry I brought it up again. Now inside the cave we meet Heist, and I mean he's just a little guy. There's no way he could have kidnapped the town's children. Also there's the fact that he lost his own child too, so... Anyway, you fight Heist twice, and both fights are the exact same. He attacks you, but he holds back because he doesn't want to kill you. So now comes the even bigger question. Who is the actual kidnapper? Well, if you guessed the somewhat rude partner of Barden, then you'd be correct. And then when Heist finally saw what he was really doing with his own eyes, it caused him to awaken to an archetype. But because it's not the merchant, I can only use his basic attack in this battle. But luckily, it isn't that hard, unlike another battle coming up later. Anyway, I start the thief bond with Heist, and I explore the second dungeon. But nothing of note really happens, other than some chase scenes with the big baby thing. Speaking of the big baby thing, it turns out Joanna was keeping it because her real baby died due to racism. Insert American joke here. Anyway, it's time to punch a toddler. My first attempt goes really well. I'm able to land enough critical hits to get it to the second stage of the fight. Here it will take aim, and if you played any Atlus game before, you know that means to guard. After this though, you can start attacking its eyes. But because it's almost defeated at this point, I make the mistake of ignoring its gimmick, and to quote Gallica, she healed the demon baby. But that's not the worst move it has. That belongs to Deafening Din, a move that targets all and lowers defense. And if a party member gets hit after this move, they're down for good. My next attempt was better. One, because I actually targeted its eyes, so I had to use a turn to restore them. And two, it didn't go for Deafening Din once. Then when it came for it to get healed, it was nothing more than an annoyance. So I just kept the same strategy as before, gambling. And hey, it paid off. After this, Joanna comes to her senses and asks us to take her head instead of Heist's. Now as we wait for the contest, I start two very important bonds that I have to mention. The first being the commander bond with Barden. Not only do I need the commander to get the tycoon, but it also gives me the move Formation of Vigor, a move that boosts all my party members' attack by 2 stages and moves them to the front line. And I know what you might be thinking. How can I level up an archetype if I have to keep the merchant equipped? Well, once an equipped archetype reaches max level, it will give you an item called the Hero's Leaf of Light that you can use to level up any archetype even if it's not equipped. Now with this new move, I managed to defeat this giant mimic. With it defeated, I unlock another archetype, the Trickster with Alonzo. And remember how I said Stroll was the token hot boy? Well, let's just say I retract my previous statement. I also get revenge on the Desert Kitty before I head off to Brylehaven with Johanna. And this causes 2 important things to happen. First off, I piss off the church because Johanna is a saint, or some other term for a holy person, I don't know. And secondly, Luis really liked that I pissed off the church, so now I'm a part of his little team, and I have access to his Skyrunner. So now all I have to do is steal the secret formula, but before I do, I have to clear a path for it. That requires me to defeat 3 mini-bosses, the first being Xanath. Now the difficulty comes in the form of a 3-turn time limit to defeat them, but because I can stack crits, it makes it way easier. My only problem during the Xanath fight was an unlucky crit to Stroll, but Marth survived the attack and knocked him out next turn. Next was this guy, and he was the worst one, because the fight starts off with Ear-Splitting Shriek, a move that that will daze some party members. He also hits like a fucking freight train. My best choice was to reset the fight if more than one party member got inflicted with daze, because it's better if one party member misses than two. But even if they do miss, all it takes is just one unlucky crit. After some more trial and error, Heist hits a crit even though he was dazed, and I managed to stack more crits, ending with Hulkenberg for a big fat heal. He uses ear-splitting shriek again, but no other party member was affected, and because I healed, I ensured that no party member would go down, so I was able to finish the drunkard off. For the final fight, you'll face a mage and a knight. The mage will use an almighty attack on the whole party, and the knight will just attack one party member. But because of the amount of damage the mage does, the knight will more than likely just knock a teammate out. So the best option was to keep resetting the fight until someone dodges the mage's attack. That way the knight won't get a turn. From here, I need to gamble on crits to knock out the mage, and once he's out, the knight soon follows suit. Now all we do is wait to break into Luis's room. During this time, not much happens, because I've started every single bond up until this point in the game, and the only bond that I max out is Strolls. I do get Brigittas to rank 7, but I have to wait a bit until rank 8. As for Barden, I get to rank 3 so I can unlock the general archetype. So now I can learn Shelter Formation, a move that raises the party's defense by 2 stages and puts the party in the back line. Other than that, I grind by doing optional dungeons and mini bosses. I would tell you about them, but I'm pretty sure you're aware of how I beat them. Now, on the night of the soiree, I sneak into Luis's room. Well, sneaking isn't the right word for it because I'm forced to do this janky ass parkour section, but after that, I'm caught by Juna. But we realize she's undercover just like us, so everything's fine, and we even get the formula. What could go wrong? That's right, Big Pimpin'. Now this fight isn't hard, but because this is a merchant only challenge, it means I can only use an archetype with Marth, so Juna will just have to stick to her basic attack. Now at first I thought it'd be better to attack Hector, the dog thingy, but once you get him down to low health, Big Pimpin' will just spam healing moves. Then I realized that all I need to do to win is to defeat Gladel himself, and if I just stay in the back row, Hector can't do that much damage to me, so that was my plan, until I got hit by a crit, causing my anxiety to swell, and because of that, I accidentally used Formation of Vigor, bringing me into the front row. Then I go down, but then a stroke of luck hits me, because Hector misses Juna, so I'm able to bring back Marth, and after a couple more hits, Big Pimpin's over, and the King's magic gets to him, and yeah, now we have a mess to clean up, but luckily for us, there's a traitor in Luis's crew. Wonder who that could be. But we just blame Gladel, because I mean, he can't deny it, so yeah, you know, pretty good plan. And even though the 2 dogs are suspicious of us, Luis gives us the okay after some questioning, and Juna joins my party. So now it's time to break the prince's curse. For this, we go see Juna's sister Rella, to see if she can break the curse. And seeing as I'm making a second part to this video, you can guess how effective that was. So now, all that's left to do is to wait and see what orders Luis gives us next. And that's where I'm calling it. I don't like doing multi-part series like this, but I knew if I wanted to upload a video in December, I kinda had to do this. So I'll just keep this outro short and sweet. Like, subscribe, and remember to have a fantastic day.